Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock of the Emerald Planet and Emerald Planet TV. We come to you on a week-to-week basis from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technology, services, and products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And as we have a planet of 9 billion people by 2038 and possibly 12 to 13 billion by the end of this century, how are we going to be able to take care of all these people on planet Earth? And that's what Emerald Planet's all about. We come to you looking at the solutions, the best practices from around the globe as we create the Emerald Planet. Hello, welcome to the Emerald Planet. We're making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And seeing the long-term impacts of climate change. We're glad to have you. Thank you for being with us. Looking around the globe for those 1,000 best practices, sometimes many of these are right in your own backyard, at least within your city, Washington, D.C. I have a gentleman joining us, Mark Davis, President and CEO of WDC Solar. And we're going to be talking about a decade of solar in Washington, D.C. And Mark, welcome back to the Emerald Planet TV.
Good morning, Dr. Sam. It's always a pleasure to join you. Thank you for having me back.
Oh, we're glad to have you. You're doing absolutely outstanding work, and it's amazing the size and scale of what you're doing. Tell us a little bit about WDC Solar and why is it so special in Washington, D.C., but now spreading across the United States?
Yes. One thing that's very special about what we do is we train young men and women in our community to become solar installers, and then we hire them. We give them an opportunity. We started out as a small residential solar installer, and now we've moved to a much larger residential and commercial operation.
I think that's really important. But looking at the two Mark Davises that I know, this is one, and this is the other one that's increasingly going across the United States. But how is it so important that you work with and educate the decision makers and elected officials so that the solar and the benefits of solar get to this level?
Right. So we have to have policies in place from the federal, state, and city level so that we can grow solar in our communities. And part of that growth entails me getting out, explaining to the council members and to the politicians the benefits that are involved within these policies. As in jobs, number of jobs created, number of CO2 emissions reduced from the atmosphere, those types of things. There's a connection there. And then me getting out on the roof, working with the guys, keeping them motivated. This gentleman here is one of our project managers. I mean, just making sure that everything in the field is going well and matching with everything that we do on the political side.
And the whole thing about it, being president, CEO of your own company is a grand and glorious title, but also it entails a lot of work. And if you're not out doing it every day, then things probably are just not happening. But looking at the scale, you started out a number of projects, low-income solar down in Ward 8 in Washington, D.C., and that has just really blossomed. What led you into these larger scale projects, and how do you think that's morphed not only your company, but also the communities like a Ward 8 or Ward 7 in Washington, D.C.?
Well, I think it, again, goes back to the political side of it. Our council members and our mayor, they want to see young men and women in our community doing this work. We know that it is work that's going to get done, and they want to see people in our community doing it, not someone coming from outside into DC to do this work. And we've been fortunate. We've been able to train them and get them out working on these projects. So from there, we started working with DC Housing Authority and bringing them on board, and that brought on a whole new scale for us. We're doing larger developments in the district, and it's just been a very good program for all residents, low-income residents, whether they're receiving training, jobs, or whether you're the recipient of a solar system on your home that costs you nothing. It's just been a fantastic program.
Looking at the technology, I know this is something that you've done extensive research about and really trying to bring the latest technology into these under-resourced communities. Why is that so important? One is that you're training for jobs. That really is important. But to technology transfer and to have a public that understands what's going on around them and why solar is so important.
That was a heavy lift in the beginning, I must say, because we really had to go and convince low-income residents that this free system would reduce their electric bills. And when you go into that community promising something free, their antennas go up. It's just not an easy sell. But we were persistent. We held a lot of town hall style meetings at libraries, at community centers, churches, at our warehouse location. So in the beginning, it was very difficult to get this program up and running because we had to have people sign up. But after about 3 years, it was people were called. We had a board full of people ready to get signed up because of the savings involved.
Now, looking at this roof, on a large scale, probably it's. I know you're doing schools and apartment buildings now. How do you leap from residential into something this size? And why was it important to have those first 3 or 4 years doing the residential solar to move now into larger scale government buildings and also commercial buildings?
Right. That's a very, very good question. So once we started out with the small resi projects, we really began to understand solar, how it worked, how the training worked. We understood what good engineering looked like. And Paul will talk with you about the engineering maybe later. But so we started to hire very good engineers, very good master electricians. And I think that was the key in us progressing from, let's say, a small resi company to a major large project company. It was basically having good personnel that could draw, that understood how solar worked on a commercial scale, so that we could then people would have confidence in us doing the larger projects, like you saw in that picture before. That was Ludlow Taylor. That's a elementary school that we did there in the District of Columbia.
Yeah, and then but having these the master craftsmen involved with you is critically important. But something that you really do, I was impressed with meeting you over 10 years ago, is that you've always been investing in training, even before you even had the positions that you could hire people on a full-time basis. So why is education so critically important?
Right. The first thing is we want a skilled workforce. We want a workforce that understands solar, that have been trained by professionals, and that's what we do. So our goal was to we want to have a first-rate training program in Ward 8, and we want it to be second to none, and we want to have the best trainers in the country come in, which is what we do. I mean, we have some of the best trainers in the country. they'll come in and we'll do in-house training. We'll have them come in and they'll train. So we're confident that once these young men and women leave our space, that they know what they're doing. And then once that happens, we can put them in the field working with more experienced solar installers. And in a couple of years, they're earning a very good living for their family. And some of these guys come to us and, they were basically at zero, and now they're the number one breadwinner in that household, which is so very good.
Well, I've been in some of your graduations. I actually help present some certificates from time to time. What does this do not only for the graduates and for your company, WDC Solar, but what does it do for the community to have more people coming out with professional certifications that they can actually take anywhere in the United States they want to go?
Well, I think it uplifts and benefit the community in a lot of ways. And I know that there are guys that I've trained who are working for other solar installation companies in the District of Columbia. I see them down at DCRA and at other places, and they're doing a fantastic job. And that's very rewarding in itself, to know that I started something that changed some people's lives in a positive way. And it was very difficult in the beginning, but we stuck with it. I stuck with it. My staff, we have a great staff, and many of the people you see in these pictures, we've hired. I see some in this picture that we have in our Atlanta office. They came up from Atlanta to get trained in DC. So it's been a blessing.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. Looking at the scale of these projects, these are some very lovely projects. And now that you're at this level, how does that leverage the name of WDC Solar? And how does that bring more people having confidence that, yes, they can have solar, it's going to save them money, and it's going to protect the environment?
Well, this project, for instance, is Benning Terrace. And when we go to Benning Terrace, we feel safe. Benning Terrace is a rough part of DC, but we feel safe because we have about 3 guys on our installation team that know people at Benning Terrace. They have family members there. So when we go to a place like that and they see that the training is working, people are installing solar in their communities that look like them. They actually, some of them, they're relatives. So we are supported in the community in a very positive way. I know that when I go out to many of these communities, people come up and talk to me about what we're doing and thanking me for hiring their cousin or giving them training. But the hard work continues, and we have to stay vigilant, make sure that we're doing a good job every day. My day starts at about 5:30 every morning, and I'm on a roof or somewhere, and it ends in late in the evening. It's been a long, hard road.
Mark, you got 10 seconds. What do you see for the growth and development of WDC Solar over these next 5, 10, and 15 years? You got literally 10 seconds.
I want to see Chicago grow. We helped with that feature legislation out there. I want to see it continue to grow. We're set up there to go. I want Georgia to take off in a big way. We're here and we're ready to go here. And I want the training. I want more jobs, and I want more solar to help clean up the environment so that we leave this world in a better place than we found it.
That's fantastic. Mark Davis, CEO, WDC Solar. Thank you. As great the Emerald Planet. Looking at solar energy and its importance as we move through the 21st century for employment, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, technology transfer into under-resourced communities, and providing financing. All of this is an important part as far as solar energy itself is concerned. And this is something that we're going to be talking about, WDC Solar and Washington, D.C., that it's going into its second decade, but really dedicated to the inner city and a number of under-resourced communities. We have a gentleman who's I met years ago and now is working in this area as far as the larger commercial and government projects, and talk a little bit about that as another type of best practice in the solar industry. So, Paul Maylone, we're welcoming you, Director of Engineering at WDC Solar, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the theme joining forces. But tell us about who you are and your evolution going through the solar industry that we talked a little bit about yesterday, and how that prepared you for what you're doing now.
Well, I got started in photovoltaics in 2007. And at the time, there was really nothing going on here on the East Coast. So I went out to California and started in a small mom and pop company called Ojai Solar. And they got their first big commercial project while I was there. And that was, at the time, a pretty big project. It was a 250 kilowatt carport. And it launched me into the commercial world. I then went on to Sunlight and Power, which is the oldest installer integrator in the country. A lot of solar legends moved through Sunlight and Power, and I got a full training in photovoltaics while I was there, and came back to DC in 2014 and joined Standard Solar, where I met Mark. Mark and I worked together on what was one of Standard's largest projects at that point, which was the urban solar portfolio for DC DGS. It was an 8 megawatt project on 40 different buildings, and Standard had somewhere between 9 and 10 subcontractors for the work, because it was on 40 buildings was a big logistical challenge, and each of the subs took 4 to 5 projects, and Mark was one of those subs, and we remained friends after that project, and after I left Standard, and I ended up doing some drawings for a bunch of companies. I was sort of doing freelance design work, and WDC became one of those companies. And then I was invited a year ago to attend a training that Mark has been doing really since the company's inception. This workforce development program has been at its core, and he does trainings every year. And not just in DC, but this was the first time I'd actually seen one up close. And I just felt so inspired and kind of fell in love with the mission of the company. And we started working together full time pretty shortly after that.
Now, looking at these large projects, Paul, why is it so important that a company like WDC Solar, and there are a number of them across the city, but being involved in DCSEU, being involved DOEE, many of these agencies, how does that help them to morph into larger projects and to better serve low resource communities that may be ignored or forgotten, as far as many of the larger solar companies or even renewable energies at all?
Yeah, well, the benefit is really twofold. The residents are benefiting, obviously, from the savings of having a renewable energy system installed. Most of these projects are structured so that they're community solar in aggregate, but the benefits flow down to the residents. We've been doing a number of DC Housing Authority projects, so the more money that the Housing Authority can capture for its residents, obviously, the more beneficial it is to the community. But in the city, there are several RFPs that are written specifically for local workforce participation. Right? You've got to be a certified business within DC, and they want minority participation. There are goals and sometimes even mandates written into the scope of the work that you have to fulfill it. So it's oftentimes in DC, it's built locally,
Right.
which is a real benefit to the community to have the jobs and the workforce development program kind of written into the work.
Now, looking at these larger projects, I know that there's a number for the housing projects in various areas around Washington, D.C., the public schools, even the central government buildings are now going more and more solar. What do you think the benefit is, not only to the environment, of course, but also to the citizens, the ratepayers, the taxpayers in the city, and also to the various local communities? How does all this work together to benefit everyone?
Well, it's worked really well in DC to benefit everyone, mostly because of the DC SREC market. So
Now, what does that mean?
It is solar renewable energy credits or solar renewable energy certificates, if you prefer. Some people call it certificates. But these are the, this is a way for a PV system owner to sell certificates of energy that they've produced. So if you produce a megawatt hour, you get a credit. And around the country, these markets are really stimulating renewables, and they're higher than they are anywhere in the country. Here in DC, the SREC market has been trading above $400 per credit per megawatt hour.
Now, looking at the hiring and training and bringing in local people, why is that so important? And what is that doing as far as bringing a new brain trust or technology transfer into lower income or under-resourced communities?
Well, it's just a central mission of WDC that we have this workforce development piece attached to the work that we do. It's the first company that I've worked for in PV that is aggressive on that and wants to train folks from its own community. And some of them are disadvantaged. Some of them are returning citizens. And we try to open our doors to everyone. I wouldn't say that would be common for the companies that we compete with or the other companies that I've worked for. I would say that's kind of unique to WDC, but it's highly beneficial. The training for this and my ability to take the last decade of my career and now try to take all, convey all the lessons learned is so beneficial to the industry. I wanted as many mentors as I could have when I was starting out.
Now, looking at this large-scale project, what are some of the best lessons? We're all about solutions and best practices on Emerald Planet TV. That's what we share all over the globe. Why is a project of this size and scale so important for a company like WDC to be giving, in essence, giving back into the community, even though it's doing it as a what you call social responsible company?
Well, the larger the project, the more that we're able to possibly see on margin. With construction, margin is slim. Sometimes you break even, sometimes you lose money, but the theory is if you scale up, you're playing on a scale where you can potentially see more money, and that means more hires. In the last year at WDC, because of the work that we've done and growing things out, we've gone from a 10-person company to a 50-person company.
That's just incredible in the inner city.
Yeah, yeah. So that's big growth, and we're sustaining families with that growth.
Now, how is this helping?
Allows,
How is this helping the government, the school systems, and others to have solar energy? Why is that so important?
Well, it's written into the legislation that we've got to cut carbon emissions in DC by 50%, 50% below 2006 levels in 2032. And then they want to be 100% free of emissions by 2050. So how do we get to that goal? Well, we got to install a lot of solar. It's taken off because of that legislation, the solar market in DC, but it really wouldn't have had that kind of launch if it weren't for the legislation.
Now, I'm just going to go through some of these drawings we have, but looking at the work that you're doing, you're the director of engineering. How are you bringing new knowledge and skills into the community? And we're going to go off on that question. You got about 30 seconds. And why is it important to be continually bringing in new knowledge and skills to the community that you can produce this kind of work and these sophistication of projects?
Yeah, well, the training that I've been trying to provide to our students, we're now a registered apprenticeship program in DC for renewables, and I try to provide some training in design, and we use a lot of the 3D design tools that you just reviewed in the slide deck. And design is the soul of thought. I think that you can take a design education with you anywhere you go. So for folks that leave the program, hopefully they will retain, their first exposure to some pretty sophisticated design tools.
Paul, thank you very much for being with us. This is the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C., showing best practices across the globe. Talking about bringing solar energy into the inner city, at one time people would scoff at the idea. Now people are eagerly embracing solar energy across all different communities within Washington, D.C. and across the United States. It's very important that we have companies that are homegrown and also are hiring people from in the local communities so the communities themselves understand what is solar and renewable energy and why it's so important for their climate, their environment with where they live. We have a gentleman who's a true expert in all this. It's Paul Maylone. He's the Director of Engineering at WDC Solar in Washington, D.C. And we're going to talk a little bit about company culture and how does that company culture embed itself in the community and involve the community and going forward as far as renewable energy and increasing a higher level of environmental quality across all communities, regardless of resource base or history. Paul, welcome to the Emerald Planet TV.
Thanks for having me.
Looking at WDC Solar, I know that you have worked across the United States, gaining much knowledge. We met at Standard Solar a number of years ago, and you were actually experimenting with new different types of solar technologies, and now that's morphed into you actually joining with WDC Solar over these years. But we're talking about company culture, training, history, and the dedication and commitment back to community. Why is a company which has really a social enterprise mission so important in various inner city communities?
Mm. Well, I'll say it's the fulfillment of a large larger goal, I think, with the industry, that this this is power for the people. That renewable energy, the sun, which is the most abundant energy source on Earth, can provide free and renewable, clean energy for people so that they can get off of the resource drag that goes into their carbon emissions every year. And but that it's also, it's a powerful engine for someone's career. And I've seen a lot of folks that have entered this industry stay in this industry, and are now able to kind of do what they want because they've been in for 10 years and they're considered a veteran. It's an industry that's in its infancy still. And so if you've been in for a decade, you're considered a pro, and you're kind of, you're top talent for a company to come after. And so, I believe in these jobs as engines for prosperity for everyone that enters WDC's training program. That's the hope, is that they can get to where I've gotten to, and it's been a great career.
Now, looking at the camaraderie and the warmth, I've been knowing about and been around WDC Solar for well over a decade. And there seems to be something special about the culture that it has, but it's really been based on training and education. Why is that so critical, that you train and educate people within the inner city to be able to literally walk down the street and be at the job site, whether it's a home or the public library or the elementary school?
Mm. Well, it's got, you think globally, but you got to act locally. And being based in Anacostia and having as many of our participants, both in the training program but also in the company itself, has been a big boost to what we're trying to galvanize, this a local movement where, we're on schools. We're on multifamily complexes, and in some cases, they're the schools that our kids are going to, or they're the complex that we live in, and that's kind of neat to have that recycling of energy into the work that we do, back into the community.
I like all these metaphors. You really know how to weave this in, Paul. Thank you for doing that, because harnessing the power from within the community, and that's what we're seeing in the faces of these people right here, and this intensive training program to prepare them to go out and actually give their talents and skills, their specialized human energy, to their aunts, their uncles, their cousins, nephews, grandparents, even to their parents in some cases. How does that motivate these students, regardless of age, to really want to be in the industry, but also to be able to bring this type of renewable energy into a community that for centuries was literally almost forgot about?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's motivational only in the way that we can continue to make it a success. If we continue to make it a success and it can ripple out, DC's the geopolitical center of the world, and what could be a success here, or what is starting to look like success here, could be a success all over the world.
Yeah.
And that's an inspiration to all of us, and I think why we're all motivated to try to make this work. The
Yeah,
folks
look.
that have been successful in the program are inspiring the new entrants as well. I mean, I should just say that, you know, as we're making successes with the folks that become foremen or that become project managers, someone that's starting their first year can see where this can go.
Yeah, looking at the leadership, why is leadership of a company? We see Mark Davis here, we see Candace, the others here, but we'll focus on these two right now. Why is it so important that people that are local to the community actually evolve a very successful company and growing it at, in some cases, almost exponential growth?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Candace and Mark are the mom and pop of this mom and pop shop. That's for sure. Candace has been around with the Mark since 2009, since he started it. So, so they're the king and queen of what we do with leadership. The other two folks that you just showed, that's Nick and Scott, and then there's myself and George. And the six of us are the managers of the company. So we have a regular managers meeting every week, and we all weigh in on the topics at hand. Of course, Mark and Candace have full veto power on everything. But it's made our company's management structure really strong to have that sort of six-headed beast at management.
A very handsome group you have there. But looking at the challenges of pandemics, we're talking about the coronavirus, but we're going to use the pandemic because this is an evergreen program. But why is it so important to educate every member of the staff going out on projects or not, as far as the community itself is concerned? And how does this company culture of continually educating new topics, making sure the employees are safe? You see all the safety harnesses and all the OSHA required safety measures on the buildings that we've been looking at in these photographs. Why is this company culture really embedding itself more and more in the company, in the community as well, when it's making its employees very safe, but also very knowledgeable?
Well, we struggled with this quite a bit. Obviously, the last 2 months have been hard for so many companies around the country. Construction got an exemption in DC, and a lot of our competitors kept working and we decided to shut down. We decided that we had the resources to just pay our guys to stay at home. And we've come out of two different phases of shutdown, opening just sort of modestly. We're actually remobilizing stuff today. And I think it was important for us to not put profit before people, and that we wanted to just keep our folks safe. And it was a tough decision. Businesses are not usually in the position to make that decision. But because of Mark's leadership and because of our ability to develop a little bit of a war chest this past year, we did it, and I'm glad we did it. I never want to be looking back, wondering if I had just done this or done that. When you're in construction, there are risks everywhere that you can develop a safety plan for. This one, the safety risks were too numerous.
Yeah, but looking at this photograph we have here, Paul, this is really critical that the employees are getting well trained. But you look at the number of people here. this is affecting probably 40 or 50 other people in the community that are not even in the company. And the
Right,
company is using its resources for that. Why is that so
right.
critically important for the success? And we have one more question, but we got to be quick on this one.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. I'll be as quick as I can. We're all connected. It's important not to silo the community from the company that is within the community, right? It's all connected.
Now, I'm just going to go through these, but what do you see for the future of WDC Solar as far as the education, the training, and expanding and strengthening this company culture as it continues to grow and expanding in other cities around the United States? And you got about 30 seconds to do that, Paul.
Okay, great. So yeah, Mark and I have been developing this new formal version of the training program that he's had every year prior, and that is the Solar Academy. And we're working on a video series for this, so that it's evergreen until it's not. I mean, new tech could make it obsolete, but we want to do this video series so that we can have people be able to get training at their
Fantastic.
leisure.
Paul, this is Paul Maylone, Director of Engineering, WDC Solar. Thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet. Looking at solar energy in Washington, D.C., and now spreading across the United States in very large cities, but also in small communities, bringing a real change as more and more mandates are for renewable energy and moving farther and farther away from fossil fuels. But WDC Solar is now in its second decade, bringing solar into the inner city and working with low income residents, but at the same time bringing the same services and advanced technologies to government buildings, the school system, the libraries, just about every other structure within some of these inner city communities. We have a gentleman, Paul Maylone. He's a director of engineering for WDC Solar. We're going to be talking a little bit about the future. So, Paul, you've joined WDC Solar. You come out of a wealth of experiences and background of different areas of the United States. How do you start planning for the future of a company that's growing at a very rapid rate, moving into different cities, and yet still wants to stay rooted in its home base, which is Washington, D.C.?
Hmm. Well, I think that's a great question. It's got a couple of different prongs to it, so I'll try to take all of the prongs on separately. Well, we are growing right now outside of the DC city limits. It's been a good 5-year run in DC. When I first got back to the East Coast, there was 5 megawatts installed in DC, and I checked the SIA ticker pretty regularly, and they're saying that it's close to 90 megawatts right now that are installed in the city, and there's still a lot of market share there, but we are looking just outside the city limits right now for some utility scale projects that would, allow us to continue to grow out this base, which is got its sort of central hub in DC. But we are also in Atlanta and also in Chicago, and um, our sister company, Interurban Solar, has been growing into those markets.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we can build a national network of companies that are all sort of in the interurban solar family, and they're doing both urban solar and utility scale solar outside the city limits, ground mounts, then we can really do something national and something high impact. That's kind of my vision for WDC, is that it continues to grow and in new markets.
Now, how do you bring these are local people that have been trained, WDC Solar contributing into the community. This is something that you'll be doing in these new markets of Atlanta, Chicago, and even other places around the United States. How do you bring people along with you that want to contribute to the future, but yet still be well grounded, well paid, giving to their families, giving to their community, but yet knowing, you know, solar can be their future?
Yeah, I think the question of bringing people along with you is, one that I have uh, tried examining as much as I have been in leadership positions with companies. I want to be able to inspire and lead and instill some feeling of devotion to the companies that I'm involved in. I think if you don't have love in the company, it can be very hard. It can be very hard to bring people along. So I try to I try to fill the place with love. I try to take care of everyone that is in my charge, and I find that it works. If you want to really know the secret to managing people's performance, just give them everything that you've got, and then try to get out of their way.
Right. Yeah, get good people and train them and leave them alone. But I wanted to get to this photograph here because this is Mark and a number of the people that he's bringing along with him over that. And of course, you have to start replicating this in Atlanta and Chicago and in other
this
places.
Is Atlanta. This
okay.
photo is from Atlanta. Yeah,
Okay.
This is an install that we did at MLK. The Atlanta crew.
And the whole thing about this, though, is that you're able to replicate this in other cities and still foster success. So this is the very building that you're talking about right here. So you're really getting these large-scale projects. How does that actually aid and foster and almost as a springboard for the future of WDC Solar?
Well, I think we really just started to do these projects in the last few years. Mark started the company really as a residential operation, and the major commercial work that we've done has just been in this last year. Mm-hmm. Even when Mark was building for Standard, we're building projects now twice that size. Mm-hmm. And it is a way to just kind of say that, all right, well, we've arrived on the commercial in the commercial market, but for the utility scale market and for growth for the company, I really do think that this next year sees us pivoting to try to do more ground mounts, more solar fields, more canopies, large garage canopies like you're looking at here, and there's a lot of real estate for it. So we want to try to be as nimble as we can, and having a satellite presence in Atlanta and Chicago, we sort of have to be nimble.
Right. Now, looking at Paul at these difference between the commercial utility scale sizes, what are the differences? Is that a nuance or is it something profound? And how does that impact what you're doing at WDC Solar as far as its future and the future for the communities you'll be serving?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I think everyone in this industry sort of cuts their teeth on residential. They come through a period of residential, and you'll find that all the same pain points on a small residential project occur on the larger scale on a ground mount. There's maybe even a little bit more hand holding with a residential project because it's someone's home. But with commercial and utility scale, I would say, the difference with these ground mounts is that there's the safety plan is much more simplified. You're not on a 4-story, 5-story commercial building. You're not dealing with all the risks involved with building at high heights. You're on the ground level.
Mhm.
And I like these ground mount projects. I like the idea that WDC could be involved in North Carolina, South Carolina. I've done some projects for Dominion in the past, and I kind of want to continue that work.
Mhm.
And I think that when we're on that scale of building, hundreds of megawatts, then we can do a whole lot more for our community.
Now, looking at the community utilities, if I can call it that, because many more homes want to have solar. Actually, I have a couple of recommendations for the Capitol building itself. And these are smaller footprints, but yet they still want to have solar. So, how
Sure.
can people get involved in some of these community solar projects where they can actually benefit? At the same time, I feel like they're contributing to the society. They're reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, and
Yeah.
they're going away from fossil fuels, and they're using solar for their energy. But they want to. How do you do that in something this larger scale?
Yeah, sure. Well, a couple things there. I would say that not every house is right for solar, and so if you don't have a good south-facing roof, east or west-facing roof, if all you got is north-facing solar access, and there's a lot of shade, there's a lot of trees,
Mhm.
or your building's out of code and you really can't add any more weight,
Mhm.
um, you're better off subscribing to these groups in DC. There are a few, Arcadia Drive, and your energy can come from a satellite renewable energy generator, such as a solar field, 100 miles away,
Mhm.
or from a community solar project in the city. And DC's gotten really good at this from the standpoint of working with Pepco to develop it out. It's called a CREF type interconnection, Community Renewable Energy Facility.
Now, looking at
And
these projects going from the residential, and we're
okay,
all right
oh,
now,
okay.
Paul. But looking at the residential to commercial, community solar to the utility scale, what have you learned? What lessons have you learned at WDC Solar and other places that now you can actually apply in these much larger projects, or nuance between all of them?
Oh,
We've got to be
wow,
quick. Got to be quick.
that's a good
30
question.
seconds.
Um, well, I would just say that the, the the thing that I've learned in this industry is to um, try to model it as a generational front line. Um, it is, I think, the moral crisis of our generation that we are dealing with climate change. And we are on the front lines of that moral crisis. And this is my tour of duty. If you feel the same calling, um, as it has bubbled up at every company that I've worked for, then you can start getting really passionate about this industry. And I think that that's what I try to bring, that passion of I have to do this to save the world.
Thank you very much, Paul Maylone, Director of Engineering, WDC Solar. Thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.